Equestria Girls, Legend of Everfree. When the very first Equestria Girls came out, who would have thought we'd ever reach a fourth entry in the series? On the one hand, I am glad to see that these characters have so much staying power. Even years after their introduction, they can still entertain and engage the audience. On the other hand, I know the primary reason this series was introduced was to compete in yet another section of the toy market. And in part, I can't help but feel that some elements in this film series have less and less passion being put into them. I realize the MLP staff deserve a lot of our praise for keeping this up as long as they have. But when you have to come up with a new Equestria Girls film every year alongside the TV series it initially spawned from, you start to wonder just how long they can keep those characters and settings relevant. So where does that leave Legend of Everfree? Let's find out. The story begins with one of the greatest hooks we've ever seen in this series. The idea of Twilight still having a dark side attempting to claw its way out is quite intriguing all on its own. Add in Sunset's past mistakes giving her a similar fear makes for an excellent connection between her and Twilight. Wrap that around the eventual conflict of Gloriosa giving in to that same darkness, and you've got a fairly effective setup and conclusion for the overall story. The journey in between that beginning and ending is just not nearly as engaging. For example, the opening credits is a bit of a hit and miss for me. The song has some nice guitar, feels very much like a campfire tune to better fit the environment. But the lyrics didn't really grab me, and neither did the visuals for that matter. Looking back to Rainbow Rocks, the opening credits were far more interesting, particularly with the creative flair they added to every name they flashed across the screen. This seems like, again, one of those phoned-in elements I mentioned earlier. However, it is partially made up with some entertaining character interactions. Every Equestria Girls film has made me laugh, and Legend of Everfree is no exception. Whether it's the back and forth between Rarity and Applejack, or the out-of-nowhere craziness that is Pinkie Pie, there are more than a few chuckle-worthy moments strewn throughout. The purpose in having all these characters in the story, however, is a bit more hit and miss. Spike in particular seems almost pointless in this film. He tries to fill out a supportive role for Twilight, which can and does already get filled by Sunset, who does a much better job at it here. He has his "squirrel" lines occasionally, but overall, I think you really could write him out of the film and really not lose much at all. Which is a shame because back in the early seasons of the TV series, Spike was sometimes having difficulty finding his place when he became the main focus of an episode, and it was the Equestria Girls film where he really stood out as a great support. And nowadays, it's the TV series where he's actually standing out as a main character, and the Equestria Girls films where he struggles to find a purpose. The rest of the main six have it a little better, but not by much. It's fun to see them discover and adapt to their new superpowers, but a lot of it feels like marking off a checklist of wouldn't it be cool if. And let's not forget the most essential element of any Equestria Girls film:
buy our new toys.
Perhaps not taking up quite as much of the running time as previous films, but still no less blatant. But let's talk about some of the new characters, Gloriosa and Timber. On the one hand, giving Gloriosa humble beginnings and giving into magic due to desperation makes her far more relatable and interesting than, say, Principal Cinch from Friendship Games, while also giving her inner turmoil a genuine connection to both Twilight and Sunset. On the other hand, she's still not as engaging a villain as the Sirens from Rainbow Rocks. For one, the stakes seem lower and a bit of a repeat from Twilight's transformation during the Friendship Games. And two, the Sirens were more than just a big boss to defeat with friendship beams. They actually accomplished quite a bit with subtle suggestion, even giving Sunset some pause. As for Timber, I actually do appreciate that compared to Flash, he was more than just a nice guy for Twilight to have a crush on. They did give him a chance to show similar interest to Twilight while also giving him more of a reason to be in the story. The romance is still very quick, but it definitely could have been worse, and while not great, it is a step in the right direction. The songs are okay, I suppose. Like I've said before, the style and instrumentation are a good fit for the story's environment, but I don't think anything here measures up to, say, Rainbow Rocks or even the first Equestria Girls. Because even if you're not a fan of the style they chose for those other films, at least the music stuck out in your head after the movie's over. Whether you saw them as good or bad, the tracks were a good deal more memorable. Which, I'm sorry to say, is an issue with many elements in Legend of Everfree. Sunset Shimmer gets to do what she does best, but not quite as well as it was in Rainbow Rocks. Twilight has her moments of fear and intrigue, but still not as engaging as she was in Friendship Games. I had a few laughs here and there, but I do believe there was more effort put into the comedy of previous films. There are fewer cringeworthy moments, but not as many high points either. It feels like trying to stay in the middle of the road, not taking as many chances. In my opinion, Rainbow Rocks is still the best in the series, taking a very cliché and boring villain and making her the most interesting character in the entire film series. Friendship Games added a twist in the form of a new Twilight being reintroduced to the main six. Even the original Equestria Girls film, as clumsily executed as some elements are, still took a chance with inserting characters we knew and loved into a radically different environment. So, while I am glad I saw Legend of Everfree for what few new things it did try, I can't honestly think of a reason why I'd go back and watch it again. And I don't want the next film to stay on this safe, middle-of-the-road path. Which, by the way, is one element I really do hope this final scene teaser is hinting at. If there is any element that will shake things up, draw some genuine interest into the series again, it would have to be combining the universes and having a true crossover film. So, if that is where the series is truly heading, I'm all for it. Plus, that after credits gag did get a good laugh out of me, so good job, Pinky. In the meantime, though, I would like to hear from each of you. With 4 films in the series thus far, which Equestria Girls is your favorite and why? What were your impressions of the characters, both old and new? And what are you hoping to see happen in the next film? I would like to hear your thoughts on Equestria Girls, Legend of Everfree, and here's hoping for a full-on crossover between universes. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.
At last I see the light, and it's like the fog is lifted.